If you ever wanted to know what a punch to the gut feels like, try reading a text message about your wife's infidelity while holding a wrench. The metal tool suddenly weighs 50 pounds and your hands forget how to work. I'm Brooks Carven, and I own Carven Auto Sales on the south side of Millbrook, Ohio. It's not much. 12 used cars on a gravel lot, a trailer for an office, and a mechanic's bay where I spend most of my time fixing problems that other people created. Turns out, that skill would come in handy for more than just engines. The text came at 3:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, our 15th wedding anniversary to be exact. I was under the hood of a 2018 Honda Civic, trying to figure out why the previous owner thought duct tape was an acceptable solution for a cracked radiator hose. When my phone buzzed, unknown number, I almost ignored it. But something made me look. Your wife is with my husband. Paradise Pines Motel. Room 217. Receipt attached. The attachment was a time-stamped check-in receipt. Corporate credit card, Cleo's law firm, 2 guests, paid through midnight. I stared at the screen until the words blurred. Then I read it again, and again. Cleo had canceled our anniversary dinner 2 hours earlier. Emergency contract meeting, she'd said, her voice crisp and professional even over the phone. This client won't wait, Brooks. You understand, right? We can celebrate tomorrow. I'd understood. I always understood. Cleo worked for Hartwell, Morrison, and Associates, the biggest corporate law firm in 3 counties. She specialized in mergers and acquisitions, which meant she specialized in making rich people richer. The hours were brutal, the pressure intense, and the money excellent. We'd built our life around her career trajectory. But this wasn't a contract meeting. My hands were shaking as I forwarded the message to my contact list. Both sets of parents, my sister Janet, Cleo's brother Michael, her mother Patricia, who'd never liked me anyway but tolerated me because I kept Cleo grounded. Then I did something that would change everything. I shared my live location with all of them and typed a group message. Emergency family meeting, Paradise Pines Motel, 4:30 p.m. Come now. I didn't explain. I didn't elaborate. I just sent it and climbed into my pickup truck. The Paradise Pines Motel sat on Route 23, halfway between Millbrook and the county seat. It was the kind of place that rented rooms by the hour and asked no questions. Faded pink stucco walls, a neon sign missing half its letters, and parking spots positioned for maximum discretion. I'd driven past it 1,000 times. Never imagined I'd have a reason to stop. The parking lot held maybe 15 cars. I spotted Cleo's silver BMW immediately, the one she'd bought to celebrate her promotion to senior associate. Next to it sat a dark blue sedan I didn't recognize, but the vanity plate read Gray 1. Gray, as in Graham Dorsey, Cleo's colleague. The one she mentioned occasionally in passing. Gray thinks we should restructure the Morrison account. Gray suggested a different approach to the Henderson merger. Gray this, gray that. Now I knew why. The motel office smelled like cigarettes and industrial disinfectant. Behind the bulletproof glass sat a woman in her 60s, reading a romance novel and pretending she didn't notice the obvious drama unfolding in her establishment. I need the fire safety occupancy list for today, I said, sliding a $20 bill through the slot. She looked up from her book. Fire safety list? State regulation. All motels have to maintain current occupancy records for emergency services. I'm willing to pay for a copy. It wasn't entirely true, but it wasn't entirely false either. I'd learned about fire safety regulations during my brief stint as a volunteer firefighter, back when Cleo and I were newlyweds, and I thought community service might impress her law school friends. The woman shrugged and pulled out a clipboard. $20 for paperwork, cash only. The list confirmed what I already knew. Room 217, G. Dorsey and C. Carven. Check-in time, 2:15 p.m. Estimated checkout, 12 a.m. They'd planned to spend the night. My phone started buzzing, text messages from confused family members. Janet. What's wrong? Are you okay? Dad. Brooks, what's this about? Your mother's worried. Patricia. This better be important. I was in the middle of a bridge game. I didn't respond. Instead, I sat in my truck and waited. They arrived within 20 minutes, a convoy of concern and confusion. My parents in their ancient Buick, looking worried. Janet in her minivan, still wearing her scrubs from the hospital where she worked as a nurse. Michael in his contractor's pickup, covered in drywall dust. And Patricia in her pristine Cadillac, her expression already shifting from concern to annoyance. I gathered them in the motel parking lot next to Cleo's BMW. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the cracked asphalt. Brooks, what's going on? Mom asked. She was a small woman, barely 5 feet tall, but her voice carried the authority of someone who'd raised 3 children and buried 1 husband. You scared us half to end. I handed her the phone, showing the original message and the receipt. Here, read this. She squinted at the screen, her reading glasses perched on her nose. I watched her expression change from confusion to understanding to something I'd never seen before. Protective rage. "Oh, honey," she whispered. Dad took the phone next, then Janet, then Michael. Patricia was last, and her reaction was different from the others. She looked at the evidence, looked at Cleo's car, looked at the motel room doors, and her face went completely blank. "This is a mistake," she said finally. "Cleo would never." "Room 217, I interrupted, pointing to the second-floor balcony. "Corporate credit card, check-in receipt, her car, his car. What part of this looks like a mistake to you, Patricia?" Before she could answer, my phone rang. Cleo's number. I let it ring twice before answering. "Hey, sweetheart. How's the contract meeting going?" "Brooks." Her voice was tight, controlled. "What are you doing here?" "Here? I'm not sure what you mean. Where's here?" "Don't play games with me. I can see your truck from the window." I looked up at the second-floor rooms. A curtain twitched in 217. "Oh, that here," I said. "I'm having a family meeting. You know how it is. Sometimes you need to gather everyone together to discuss important business." "Brooks, listen to me very carefully. You need to leave. Right now. This isn't what you think it is." "Really? What do I think it is?" The line went quiet for a long moment. Then, "I can explain everything, but not like this. Not with everyone watching." "Explain what, exactly? The contract you're working on? The one that required an overnight stay at a motel? Must be some complicated paperwork." "Brooks, here's what's going to happen, Cleo. I'm going to ask the motel manager to do a safety check on room 217, standard procedure when there are concerns about guest welfare. I have witnesses, I have documentation, and I have a very reasonable concern that something might be wrong. After all, my wife told me she was in a business meeting, but her car is parked at a motel. That seems like the kind of situation that might require a wellness check, don't you think?" The silence stretched longer this time. "You don't understand," she said finally. "Then help me understand. Come down here and explain it to your mother. Explain it to my parents. Explain it to everyone who dropped what they were doing because they thought there was a family emergency." "I can't." "Why not?" "Because I'm not alone." Those 4 words hung in the air like a confession. I looked at the faces surrounding me, my family, her family, all of them processing what they just heard through my phone's speaker. "I know," I said quietly. "Room 217, G. Dorsey and C. Carven. The fire safety list is very thorough." I ended the call and walked into the motel office. The manager was a thin man in his 50s, wearing a polo shirt with the Paradise Pines logo. He looked like he'd seen every possible variety of human drama and wanted no part of any of it. "I need you to do a wellness check on room 217, I told him. "I have concerns about the guests." "What kind of concerns?" "My wife told me she was in a business meeting, but she's registered in your motel with another man. I'm worried about her safety." It was technically true. I was worried about her safety, specifically how unsafe she was going to feel when this whole situation exploded. The manager glanced through the window at the crowd in his parking lot. "Those folks with you?" "Family members. They're concerned, too." He sighed and grabbed a master key from behind the desk. "This better not turn into some kind of domestic situation. I don't need that kind of trouble." "No trouble," I assured him. "Just a simple wellness check." We walked across the parking lot, up the concrete stairs to the second floor. The family followed at a respectful distance, but close enough to see and hear everything. Room 217 was at the end of the balcony, overlooking the highway. The manager knocked 3 times. "Motel management, wellness check." Muffled voices from inside, urgent whispering, the sound of someone moving around quickly. The manager knocked again. "I need to verify guest safety. Please open the door." More whispering, then footsteps. The door opened 6 inches, held by the security chain. Cleo's face appeared in the gap, her hair disheveled, her makeup smeared. "There's no problem here," she said. "We're fine." "Ma'am, I need to verify the identity of both registered guests. State regulation." "This is ridiculous. We're consenting adults. We haven't done anything wrong." The manager looked uncomfortable. "Ma'am, if you could just—" "Let me help," I said, stepping forward. I held up the fire safety list. "Graham Dorsey and Cleo Carven. Those are the registered names, right?" Cleo's eyes went wide when she saw the paperwork. "How did you—" "Public record. Fire safety regulations require accurate occupancy lists. So if Mr. Dorsey is in there with you, and you're both registered guests, then everything should be perfectly legitimate, right? The door closed. We heard more urgent whispering, then the sound of the security chain being removed. The door opened fully. Cleo stood there in a hotel bathrobe, her professional composure completely gone. Behind her, a man in his 40s was pulling on a dress shirt. Tall, dark hair, expensive watch. He looked exactly like the kind of guy who would drive a car with vanity plates. "Brooks," Cleo said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I can explain." I reached into my jacket and pulled out a manila folder. Inside were printouts of the text message, the receipt, the fire safety list, and photos of both cars in the parking lot. "No need to explain," I said. "The documentation is pretty clear." I handed copies of the folder to Mom, to Patricia, to Michael, to Janet. Each of them opened it and read through the contents. Patricia's face went through several color changes. "Cleo Marie Hartwell," she said, using my wife's maiden name. "What have you done?" "It's not what it looks like," Cleo said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Really?" I asked. "Because it looks like you canceled our anniversary dinner to spend the night at a motel with your colleague. It looks like you used a corporate credit card to pay for the room. It looks like you lied to me about where you were going and what you were doing. So please, enlighten us. What does it actually look like?" Graham Dorsey stepped forward, trying to assert some kind of authority. "This is a private matter. You people need to leave." "People?" Dad stepped up beside me. He was 73 years old and built like a retired steelworker, which he was. "You talking about family, son?" "This is harassment," Graham said. "I'm calling the police." "Great idea," I said. "Let's get them involved. I'm sure they'll be very interested in the corporate credit card fraud. Using company funds for personal expenses is a felony, isn't it, Cleo?" "You'd know better than me. You're the lawyer." Cleo's face went pale. "It's not fraud. I'll reimburse the company." "With what money? The money from our joint account? The account I contribute to? So essentially, I'd be paying for your affair. That's rich." The word affair hung in the air like a physical presence. Nobody had said it out loud until that moment. Now it was real, undeniable, documented. Janet stepped forward. As a nurse, she was used to handling crisis situations. "Cleo, honey, maybe we should all go somewhere private and talk about this." "There's nothing to talk about," I said. I reached into my other jacket pocket and pulled out a small wrapped box. "I came here to give my wife her anniversary present. 15 years of marriage seemed like something worth celebrating." I set the box on the concrete balcony railing. "Happy anniversary, sweetheart. I hope the contract was worth it." I turned and walked toward the stairs. Behind me, I heard Cleo calling my name, but I didn't stop. I had one more thing to do. In the parking lot, I pulled out my phone and opened my email. The message was already composed. I'd written it during the drive to the motel. To herhartwellmorrison.com, subject, corporate credit card misuse, urgent dear HR department. I am writing to report the unauthorized use of a corporate credit card by employee Cleo Carven, senior associate. Attached documentation shows that Ms. Carven used company funds to pay for a motel room for personal purposes during work hours on date. The attached fire safety list confirms that Ms. Carven registered at Paradise Pines Motel with non-employee Graham Dorsey for an overnight stay, claiming to be in a business meeting. I believe this constitutes fraud and violation of company policy. Please investigate immediately. Sincerely, Brooks Carven, spouse of employees. I attached the photos, the receipt, and the fire safety list. Then I hit send. The family was walking down the stairs now, their faces showing various degrees of shock, disappointment, and anger. Patricia looked like she'd aged 10 years in 10 minutes. "Brooks," Mom said, reaching for my arm. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine," I said. "Better than fine, actually. I finally understand what's been going on." "What happens now?" Janet asked. I looked back up at the motel room, where Cleo and Graham were having what appeared to be a heated argument through the open door. Now the contract closes itself. I climbed into my pickup truck and drove home, leaving my wife to figure out her own transportation. After all, she had Graham, and his car, and his corporate credit card. For the first time in months, I was smiling. The house felt different when I walked through the front door. Same furniture, same pictures on the walls, same coffee mug Cleo had left in the sink that morning. But everything had changed, like someone had shifted the world 3 degrees to the left while I wasn't looking. I sat in my recliner, the old leather one Cleo always complained about, and waited. She'd have to come home eventually. Her clothes were here, her laptop, her life. You can't run away to a motel forever, especially when your corporate credit card just got flagged for fraud. The call came at 8:30 p.m. Brooks, we need to talk. Sure. Where are you? I'm at Graham's place, his apartment downtown. Of course she was. How's that working out for you? Don't be sarcastic. This is serious. You're right. Fraud charges are very serious. How do you think your law license will hold up under that kind of scrutiny? Silence. Then, you sent that email to HR. I did. Why would you do that? You could have just talked to me first. I laughed, and it sounded harsh even to my own ears. Talked to you? When, exactly? Before you canceled our anniversary dinner? Before you checked into a motel with another man? Before you lied to my face about where you were going? When would have been a good time for that conversation, Cleo? It's complicated. No, it's really not. You're having an affair. You used company money to fund it. You got caught. Those are facts, not complications. Graham and I, it's not what you think. What do I think? You think this is some sordid affair, but it's not. We have feelings for each other. Real feelings. This isn't just physical. I had to set the phone down for a moment. She was defending her affair by telling me it was emotionally meaningful. The logic was so twisted it made my head hurt. That's supposed to make me feel better? I asked when I picked up the phone again. I'm trying to explain. Here's what I understand, Cleo. You threw away 15 years of marriage for a guy who drives a car with vanity plates. You risked your career, your reputation, and your family relationships for someone who was willing to commit corporate fraud to spend a night at the Paradise Pines Motel. If that's love, then I clearly don't understand the concept. You don't understand anything. You never have. There it was. The real Cleo. The one who'd been hiding behind professional politeness and anniversary dinners. Enlighten me. You're satisfied with mediocrity, Brooks. You're happy running a used car lot, living in the same house, doing the same things year after year. I want more than that. I deserve more than that. And Graham represents more? Graham understands ambition. He understands what it takes to build something significant. He doesn't just accept things the way they are. I looked around our living room. The house we'd bought together when she graduated law school. The mortgage I'd been paying while she built her career. The life we'd constructed piece by piece over 15 years. You know what, Cleo? You're right. I don't understand. I don't understand how someone throws away everything they have for something they might get. But I'm learning. What's that supposed to mean? It means the contract is closed. Come get your things whenever you want. I'll be at the shop. I hung up and turned off the phone. The next morning brought consequences. I opened Carven auto sales at 7 a.m., same as always. By 7:15, my phone was ringing nonstop. Cleo's colleagues, mutual friends, neighbors who'd heard the gossip. Small towns are like that. News travels faster than physics should allow. The first call was from Ricky Torino, my best friend since high school. Ricky owned Murphy's Tavern downtown, a blue-collar bar where the beer was cold and the conversations were honest. Holy hell, Brooks. Is it true about Cleo and that corporate guy? It's true. Man, I'm sorry. That's rough. You okay? I'm fine. Better than fine, actually. You want to talk about it? I can open early. We can have a beer. Thanks, but I've got work to do. Work? Brooks, your wife just imploded your marriage. Take a day off. My wife made her choice. Now I'm making mine. The second call was from Janet. Brooks, I've been thinking about yesterday. About what happened at the motel. Are you sure you're handling this the right way? What way should I be handling it? I don't know. Maybe with less. Public humiliation. Cleo's family is devastated. Patricia hasn't stopped crying. Patricia should have raised her daughter better. That's harsh. So is adultery. Maybe you two could try counseling, work things out. Marriages go through rough patches. Janet, she was registered in a motel room with another man, under both their names. Overnight, with company money. This isn't a rough patch. This is a deliberate choice. The third call was from my lawyer, Tom Morrison. Not related to the Morrison and Cleo's firm, just an unfortunate coincidence. Brooks, I heard what happened. You need to be careful how you proceed. Divorce law in Ohio can be tricky. What do you mean? I mean, don't do anything stupid. Don't change the locks, don't empty the bank accounts, don't destroy her property. Document everything, but don't retaliate. Let the legal system handle it. I'm not planning to retaliate. Good, because the email you sent to her HR department could be seen as vindictive. If she loses her job over this, it could affect alimony calculations. Alimony? She makes 3 times what I make. Not if she's unemployed. Think about it. I thought about it. Then I thought about something else. The fourth call came at 10 a.m. Unknown number. Mr. Carven, this is Carla Dorsey, Graham's wife. I sat down heavily in my office chair. Mrs. Dorsey. I think we should meet. I'm not sure that's a good idea. I'm the one who sent you the message yesterday about the motel. That got my attention. You? I've been tracking Graham's movements for 3 months. Credit card statements, GPS on his phone, hotel receipts. Yesterday wasn't the first time, Mr. Carven. It was just the first time I decided to do something about it. Why me? Why not confront him yourself? Because confronting him directly would have given him time to cover his tracks. This way, there are witnesses, documentation, evidence that can't be dismissed or explained away. I had to admire the strategy. You're very thorough. I'm a forensic accountant. Thoroughness is my job. Can we meet? I think we can help each other. How? I have information you need. Financial records, communication logs, evidence of other indiscretions, and I suspect you have information I need. What kind of information? The kind that proves this wasn't just an affair. It was a calculated plan. We agreed to meet at Murphy's Tavern at noon. Neutral ground, public place, plenty of witnesses. Carla Dorsey turned out to be nothing like I'd expected. Mid-30s, professional but not flashy, with the kind of quiet intensity that suggested she missed very little. She carried a leather portfolio and ordered coffee instead of alcohol. Thank you for meeting me, she said, settling into the booth across from me. I know this is awkward. Awkward doesn't begin to cover it, she smiled grimly. No, I suppose it doesn't. How much do you know about your wife's relationship with my husband? I know they work together. I know they were registered at a motel yesterday. Beyond that, I'm learning as I go. They've been having an affair for 8 months. The number hit me like a physical blow. 8 months. Not a sudden passion, not a moment of weakness. 8 months of planning, lying, deceiving. How do you know? She opened the portfolio and spread documents across the table. Credit card statements, phone records, hotel receipts, restaurant bills. A paper trail of betrayal, organized with forensic precision. Graham thinks he's clever, she said. He thinks using cash and separate accounts covers his tracks, but he forgets that I handle our taxes, our investments, our financial planning. I see everything. I studied the documents. The pattern was clear once you knew what to look for. Regular meetings, always at the same hotels, always on days when Cleo claimed to be working late. Why didn't you confront him earlier? Because I wanted to understand the scope of it. Graham doesn't just have affairs, Mr. Carven, he has plans. This relationship with your wife isn't just about attraction. It's about advancement. What do you mean? Cleo is being considered for partnership at her firm. Graham works for a competing company that's been trying to poach Hartwell Morrison's top talent. This affair isn't just personal, it's professional espionage. The implications hit me slowly. You're saying he seduced my wife to get inside information? I'm saying he seduced your wife because she has access to client lists, merger documents, and strategic plans worth millions of dollars. The personal relationship is just the delivery method. I leaned back in the booth, processing this information. Does Cleo know? I doubt it. Graham is very good at making women feel special while he's using them. I should know. I was married to him for 12 years before I figured it out. Was. I filed for divorce this morning, but I wanted to talk to you first because I think your wife is about to get a very unpleasant surprise. What kind of surprise? The kind where she realizes that Graham never intended to leave me for her. The kind where she finds out that everything he told her about loving her and building a future together was part of a business strategy. She pulled out another document, a printed email thread. I found this on Graham's laptop last night. Read it. The emails were between Graham and someone named David Chen at Morrison & Associates' biggest competitor. The subject line was Hartwell Acquisition Strategy. The content made my stomach turn. Graham had been feeding information about Cleo's cases, her clients, her firm's strategic plans to a rival company, and he'd been using their relationship to get that information. She's going to be destroyed when she finds out, I said. Yes, professionally and personally, unless what? Unless we give her a chance to minimize the damage, to come clean before the information surfaces in other ways. I looked at Carla Dorsey across the table. She was offering me a choice. I could let Cleo walk blindly into the trap Graham had set for her, or I could warn her about what was coming. Why would you want to help her? She's been sleeping with your husband. Because Graham used her just like he used me. Because she's about to lose everything while he walks away clean. And because I believe in justice, even for people I don't particularly like. I thought about it for a long moment. Cleo had betrayed me, lied to me, humiliated me in front of both families. She'd thrown away our marriage for a man who was using her for corporate espionage, but she was still my wife, and she was about to become the victim of something much worse than adultery. What do you want me to do? Call her. Arrange a meeting. Show her these documents. Give her a chance to get ahead of this before it destroys her completely. And then? Then we both file for divorce and let the legal system sort out the rest. I looked at the evidence spread across the table. The careful documentation, the paper trail, the systematic betrayal. Carla Dorsey had built an airtight case against her husband, and she was offering to share it. There's something else you should know, she said. Graham has been embezzling money from his company to fund these affairs. The corporate credit card your wife used yesterday. It's tied to an account that Graham has been systematically draining for months. When this comes out, both of them are going to face criminal charges. The picture was getting clearer, and it was uglier than I'd imagined. Cleo hadn't just had an affair, she'd been manipulated into becoming an accessory to corporate espionage and embezzlement. How long do we have? Graham's company is conducting an internal audit next week. They're going to find the missing money. When they do, they'll trace it back to the credit cards, the hotels, the whole operation. Your wife has maybe 5 days to get ahead of this. I gathered up the documents and put them back in the portfolio. I'll call her. Mr. Carven? Brooks? I know this is hard. But you should know what happened to us, to our marriages. It's not really about us. We were just collateral damage in Graham's larger plan. What plan? To destroy Hartwell Morrison from the inside and position himself for a promotion at the competing firm. He's done this before, in other cities, with other companies. We're not his first victims, and we won't be his last. I walked out of Murphy's Tavern with a new understanding of what had happened to my marriage. It wasn't just adultery. It wasn't just betrayal. It was a calculated business strategy that had used my wife as an unwitting weapon against her own career. And now I had to decide whether to save her from the consequences or let her face them alone. The choice, it turned out, wasn't as hard as I thought it would be. I called Cleo from the parking lot of Murphy's Tavern, the portfolio of evidence sitting on my passenger seat like a loaded weapon. She answered on the first ring. Brooks? Thank God. I've been trying to reach you all morning. I turned my phone off. I needed to think. Listen, I know you're angry, and you have every right to be. But we need to talk. Really talk. There are things you don't understand about the situation. You're right. There are things I don't understand. That's why I'm calling. We need to meet. Okay. Good. That's good. Where? Neutral ground. The Millbrook Diner on Main Street. 1 hour. Brooks, I want you to know that I never meant for things to happen this way. What you saw yesterday, it's not the whole story. I know. That's what we need to discuss. The Millbrook Diner was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone, which made it perfect for what I had in mind. Whatever happened during our conversation would have plenty of witnesses, and in a town like Millbrook, witnesses meant accountability. I arrived first and picked a corner booth with a clear view of the entrance. The lunch crowd was beginning to drift in. Construction workers, office staff, retirees passing the time over coffee and pie. Ordinary people going about ordinary days, unaware that their quiet diner was about to host the closing chapter of a marriage. Cleo walked in at exactly 1 p.m., and I barely recognized her. She'd always been put together, professionally polished, but today she looked fragile. Her usually perfect hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, her makeup was minimal, and she was wearing jeans and a sweater instead of her typical business attire. She slid into the booth across from me, her hands shaking slightly as she reached for the menu. You look tired, I said. I didn't sleep much last night. Graham and we had a long conversation about everything. How's that going? The conversation? It's complicated. He's trying to figure out how to handle the situation at work. The HR investigation, the corporate credit card issue. He thinks there might be a way to minimize the damage. I almost felt sorry for her. She had no idea what was coming. Cleo, I need to show you something. I placed Carla Dorsey's portfolio on the table between us. Before you say anything, before you try to explain or defend what's been happening, I want you to look at these documents. She opened the portfolio cautiously, like it might explode. I watched her face as she processed what she was seeing. The credit card statements came first. 8 months of hotel charges, restaurant bills, travel expenses. Her expression shifted from confusion to recognition to something approaching horror. Where did you get these? Graham's wife. She's been tracking his activities for months. His wife knows? His wife is a forensic accountant, Cleo. She knows everything. Cleo continued reading, her face growing paler with each document. When she reached the email thread between Graham and David Chen, she stopped breathing altogether. This can't be real, she whispered. It's real. Graham has been feeding information about your cases to Morrison and Associates' biggest competitor. Client lists, merger strategies, settlement amounts, everything you've been working on for the past 8 months. She looked up at me, her eyes wide with panic. He told me he loved me. He said he wanted to build a life together. He wanted to build a career together. Your career, specifically. He's been using your access to inside information to position himself for a promotion at the competing firm. But we talked about leaving our spouses, about starting over, about what, Cleo? About you giving up your partnership track at Hartwell Morrison to follow him to another city, another company? Did he ever give you specifics about this new life you were going to build? She sat in silence for a long moment, mentally reviewing conversations, promises, plans that suddenly looked very different in light of the evidence. The credit card charges, she said finally. Some of these dates. I wasn't even with him. No, you weren't, because you weren't his only target, Cleo. You were just the one with the most valuable access. I pulled out another document, Carla's investigation notes. Graham has done this before, 3 times in the past 5 years, in 3 different cities. He targets female executives at law firms, accounting companies, investment banks. He seduces them, extracts information, then moves on when the operation is complete. You're lying. I wish I was, but the pattern is clear, and it's all documented. The waitress approached our table, but I waved her away. This conversation needed to happen without interruptions. There's more, I said. The corporate credit card you used yesterday, it's tied to an account that Graham has been systematically draining for months. When his company's internal audit discovers the missing money next week, both of you are going to face criminal charges. Criminal charges? Embezzlement, corporate espionage, fraud. Graham set up the whole operation to look like you were a willing participant. Your name is on half the transactions, Cleo. Your signature is on documents authorizing information transfers. She was shaking now, her professional composure completely gone. I never signed anything like that. Check your email, check the documents you've been sending Graham over the past 8 months. I'll bet you'll find authorization forms, information requests, data transfers that you thought were legitimate business communications. She pulled out her phone with trembling hands and started scrolling through her sent messages. I watched her face as she found what she was looking for. Oh God, she breathed. The Morrison merger documents, the Henderson client list, the settlement strategies for the Patterson case. I sent him everything. Because you thought you were helping someone you loved. Because you thought you were building a future together. Because Graham is very good at making women trust him. What am I going to do? It was the first time in our entire marriage that Cleo had asked me for advice about her career. The irony wasn't lost on me. You have 2 choices, I said. You can wait for the audit to discover the missing money and face the consequences as they come. Or you can get ahead of it. How? You go to your boss today. You show him these documents. You explain that you were manipulated into providing information to a competitor, and you offer to cooperate fully with any investigation. That would destroy my career. Cleo, your career is already destroyed. The question is whether you want to face criminal charges along with professional disgrace. She stared at the documents spread across the table, the evidence of her manipulation laid out like a roadmap to disaster. Why are you helping me? She asked finally. After what I did to you, to our marriage, why would you care what happens to me? It was a fair question, and I'd been asking myself the same thing since my conversation with Carla Dorsey. Because 15 years of marriage has to count for something. Because even though you betrayed me, you don't deserve to be destroyed by someone who was using you from the beginning. And because I believe in justice, even for people who've hurt me. Graham said you were weak. He said you were holding me back from my potential. Maybe I was, but at least I was honest about it. She gathered up the documents and put them back in the portfolio. If I do this, if I go to my boss and confess everything, what happens to us? To our marriage? Our marriage ended yesterday at the Paradise Pines Motel. Cleo, this doesn't change that. But maybe it gives you a chance to salvage something from the wreckage. And Graham? Graham is going to face the consequences of his choices just like you are. The difference is, you have a chance to control how those consequences play out. He doesn't. She nodded slowly, accepting the reality of her situation. I need to make some phone calls. Do it now. Don't give Graham time to realize what's happening and try to cover his tracks further. Will you come with me? To the law firm? I know it's a lot to ask, but I don't think I can face this alone. I thought about it for a moment. Cleo had humiliated me, betrayed me, thrown away our marriage for a man who was using her. But she was also about to lose everything she'd worked for over the past 15 years, and she was facing it with more honesty than she'd shown in months. "I'll drive you there," I said. "But I'm not going in with you. This is something you need to handle yourself." "Thank you." We left the diner together, walking to our separate cars like the strangers we'd apparently become. As I followed her BMW through the familiar streets of Millbrook, I realized that this was probably the last time we'd drive anywhere together. The partnership we'd built over 15 years was ending, but at least it was ending with something approaching dignity. Hartwell, Morrison, and Associates occupied a glass and steel building downtown, the kind of modern architecture that was supposed to convey success and stability. I'd been there dozens of times over the years for office parties and client events, always as Cleo's supportive husband. Today, I was just the guy delivering evidence of her professional downfall. I parked in the visitor's lot and watched Cleo walk through the main entrance, carrying the portfolio that would end her career. She looked small against the backdrop of the building she'd worked so hard to climb. My phone buzzed with a text message. "Thank you for everything. I know I don't deserve your help, but I'm grateful for it. See." I typed back, "Good luck." Then I drove home to start figuring out what the rest of my life was going to look like. The house felt different again when I walked through the front door. Not empty, exactly, but transitional, like a stage set being prepared for a different play. I sat in my recliner and waited for the phone to ring. It took 3 hours. "Brooks, it's done." Cleo's voice was hollow, exhausted. I told them everything, showed them all the evidence. They're conducting an immediate investigation. "How did they take it?" "About as well as you'd expect. I'm suspended pending the outcome of the investigation. They've frozen my access to all client files and company systems. Security escorted me out of the building." "I'm sorry." "No, you're not. And you shouldn't be. This is the consequence of my choices." "What about Graham?" "They called his company while I was still in the meeting. He was arrested an hour ago. Embezzlement, corporate espionage, fraud. Exactly like you said." "And you?" "I'm cooperating fully with the investigation. My lawyer thinks I might avoid criminal charges if I can prove I was manipulated rather than complicit. But my career at Hartwell Morrison is over." "What will you do?" "I don't know. Start over, I guess. Try to rebuild something from what's left." We sat in silence for a moment, two people who'd shared 15 years of marriage trying to figure out how to say goodbye. "Brooks? Yeah? I know this doesn't change anything between us, but I want you to know that I'm sorry. Not just for getting caught, but for all of it. For throwing away what we had. For believing that I deserved something better than the life we built together." "I know. Do you think there's any chance we could try to work things out? Go to counseling, maybe? Try to rebuild what we had?" I thought about it for a long moment. Thought about 15 years of marriage, about anniversary dinners and shared dreams and the life we'd constructed together. Thought about the woman I'd fallen in love with in law school before ambition and professional pressure had changed her into someone I barely recognized. "No," I said finally. "I don't think there is." "Because of the affair?" "Because of who you became. The affair was just a symptom, Cleo. The real problem is that you stopped seeing our life together as something worth protecting. You stopped seeing me as someone worth being honest with. And I don't think counseling can fix that." "So this is it? 15 years, and this is how it ends?" "This is how it ends. I'll have my lawyer contact yours about the divorce proceedings." "Okay. Brooks?" "Yeah?" "Take care of yourself." "You too." I hung up the phone and looked around the house one more time. Tomorrow I'd start the process of dividing up 15 years of shared possessions, shared memories, shared dreams. Tonight, I was just going to sit in my recliner and think about what came next. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe again. The contract was finally, officially closed. 6 months after the Paradise Pines Motel, I was rebuilding my life one piece at a time. The divorce was finalized in March, the house sold in April, and by May, I'd moved into a small apartment above Murphy's Tavern. Ricky had offered me the space at a discount, and I'd accepted gratefully. It wasn't much, 2 bedrooms, a kitchen, a living room that doubled as my office, but it was mine. Carven Auto Sales was thriving in ways I'd never expected. Word had gotten around about what happened with Cleo and Graham, and somehow that had translated into increased business. People respected the way I'd handled the situation, and in a small town, reputation matters more than advertising. I'd hired 2 part-time mechanics and expanded into auto restoration. Classic cars, vintage trucks, vehicles with history and character. It turned out that fixing broken things was something I was good at, whether they had engines or not. The phone call came on a Tuesday morning in late May. "Mr. Carven, this is Detective Sarah Martinez with the Millbrook Police Department. I was wondering if you could come down to the station. We have some questions about the Graham Dorsey case. My stomach dropped. Questions about what? I'd rather discuss it in person, if that's okay. Are you available this afternoon? Am I being charged with something? No, sir, nothing like that. We just need to clarify some details for the prosecution. I agreed to meet her at 2 p.m., then spent the next 4 hours wondering what new complications had emerged from the wreckage of my marriage. The Millbrook Police Department occupied a brick building that had been the town hall until the 1980s. Detective Martinez turned out to be a woman in her 40s with graying hair and the kind of direct manner that suggested she'd seen everything at least twice. Thank you for coming in, Mr. Carven. I know this whole situation has been difficult for you. What can I help you with? We're preparing for Graham Dorsey's trial, and we need to establish a timeline of events. Specifically, we need to understand how you obtained the evidence that led to his arrest. I explained about the text message from Carla Dorsey, the motel confrontation, the meeting at Murphy's Tavern where she'd shown me the financial documents and email correspondence. Mrs. Dorsey was very thorough in her investigation, Detective Martinez said. Almost professionally thorough. She's a forensic accountant. Thoroughness is her job. Yes, we're aware of her background. What we're trying to understand is the timing of her investigation. According to her statements, she'd been tracking her husband's activities for months before she contacted you. That's what she told me. But she waited until your anniversary to send you the motel information. Why that specific day? I thought about it. I assumed it was because that's when they were there, when she had definitive proof. Actually, according to hotel records, your wife and Mr. Dorsey had been meeting at various motels for months. Mrs. Dorsey could have exposed them at any time, but she chose your anniversary. Why? The question bothered me more than it should have. You'd have to ask her. We did. She said she wanted to maximize the emotional impact, make sure you'd be motivated to take action rather than try to work things out privately. And it worked. You exposed them publicly, which created the evidence trail we needed to build a case against Mr. Dorsey. Without your actions that day, he might have been able to cover his tracks. I was beginning to see where this was going. Are you saying Mrs. Dorsey used me? I'm saying Mrs. Dorsey is a very intelligent woman who understood that emotional leverage would be more effective than legal leverage. She needed someone to force the situation into the open, and you were the perfect catalyst. The implications were uncomfortable, but everything she showed me was real. The financial records, the emails, the evidence of corporate espionage. Oh, absolutely. Mr. Dorsey is guilty of everything we're charging him with. Mrs. Dorsey's investigation was legitimate and thorough, but her timing was strategic. I left the police station with a new understanding of what had happened 6 months earlier. Carla Dorsey hadn't just been a fellow victim seeking justice. She'd been an investigator executing a plan, and I'd been her unwitting partner. It should have bothered me more than it did. But the truth was, I was grateful for the outcome, regardless of the motivation behind it. That evening, I was closing up the shop when a familiar car pulled into the lot. Cleo's BMW, the same silver sedan that had been parked at the Paradise Pines Motel all those months ago. She got out slowly, like she wasn't sure she was welcome. She probably wasn't. Hi, Brooks. Cleo, what brings you by? I wanted to talk to you, if you have a few minutes. I gestured toward the office. Come on in. She looked around the shop as we walked, taking in the changes I'd made. The expanded workspace, the classic cars in various stages of restoration, the new equipment I'd bought with my share of the house sale. The place looks good, she said. Business seems to be going well. It is. What can I do for you? She sat in the client chair across from my desk, the same chair where customers discussed repairs and restoration projects. It felt strange to have her there, like two different parts of my life colliding. I wanted to apologize, she said. Really apologize, not just the surface-level sorry I gave you during the divorce proceedings. Okay. I've been in therapy since everything happened, trying to understand how I became the kind of person who could throw away everything that mattered for something that was completely fake. What did you learn? That I was so focused on external validation, on professional success and social status, that I lost track of what actually made me happy. I convinced myself that I deserved more than what we had, when what we had was actually pretty good. I didn't respond immediately. The apology felt genuine, but it also felt like something she needed to say more than something I needed to hear. I also wanted you to know that I'm leaving Millbrook, she continued. I got a job with a small firm in Columbus. Family law, mostly. It's not glamorous, but it's honest work helping people through difficult transitions. That sounds appropriate. The pay is about a third of what I was making at Hartwell Morrison, but it's enough to live on. I'm renting a small apartment, driving a used car, living the kind of life I used to think was beneath me. How's that working out? Better than I expected, actually. Turns out there's something to be said for simplicity. We sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Outside, the sun was setting over the car lot, casting long shadows across the gravel. Brooks, I know this doesn't change anything between us, but I want you to know that I regret what I did. Not just because it didn't work out the way I planned, but because it hurt you, because it destroyed something good that we'd built together. I appreciate that. Do you think you'll ever be able to forgive me? It was a fair question, and one I'd been asking myself for months. I think I already have, I said, not because what you did was forgivable, but because carrying anger around is exhausting. I'd rather focus on building something new than dwelling on what got destroyed. Are you seeing anyone? Not yet, but I'm open to the possibility. Good. You deserve to be happy, Brooks. You deserve someone who appreciates what you have to offer. She stood up to leave, then paused at the door. For what it's worth, I think you handled everything perfectly. The way you exposed the affair, the way you helped me understand what Graham was really doing, the way you conducted yourself during the divorce, you were better to me than I deserved. I tried to be decent about it. You succeeded. After she left, I sat in my office for a long time, thinking about forgiveness and new beginnings. Cleo was right. I had handled the situation well. Not because I was naturally noble or forgiving, but because I'd refused to let someone else's bad choices turn me into someone I didn't want to be. The phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. Carven Auto Sales. Mr. Carven, this is Lisa Patterson. I was wondering if you could help me with a restoration project. What kind of project? I inherited my grandfather's 1967 Mustang. It's been sitting in a garage for 20 years, and I'd like to get it running again. Someone told me you specialize in bringing old things back to life. I smiled. That's exactly what I do. When can you bring it by? How about tomorrow morning? Perfect. I'll be here. I hung up the phone and looked around my shop. Classic cars waiting to be restored, projects in various stages of completion, the tools and equipment I'd need to bring broken things back to life. It was a good metaphor for where I was in my own life. The marriage was over, the betrayal was in the past, and the anger had faded into something manageable. What remained was the opportunity to build something new, something better, something that reflected who I wanted to be, rather than who I'd been. The contract with my old life was officially closed. Now it was time to write a new one. The phone call that changed everything came on a Thursday morning in June, exactly 1 year and 2 weeks after the Paradise Pines motel incident. I was under the hood of Lisa Patterson's Mustang. The restoration had turned into a year-long project, but the results were spectacular. When my phone buzzed with an unknown number. Carven Auto Sales. Mr. Carven? This is David Chen from Morrison & Associates. The name was familiar, but it took me a moment to place it. Then I remembered. He was the contact on the other end of Graham Dorsey's corporate espionage operation. What can I do for you, Mr. Chen? I was wondering if we could meet. I have a business proposition that might interest you. I'm not looking for legal representation, if that's what you're calling about. Actually, I'm calling about a job opportunity. We're expanding our investigative services division, and we're looking for someone with your particular skill set. My skill set? The ability to uncover fraud, document evidence, and handle sensitive situations with discretion. Your work on the Dorsey case was impressive. I almost laughed. Mr. Chen, I'm not an investigator. I'm a mechanic who got cheated on and handled it publicly. You're a mechanic who exposed a multi-million-dollar corporate espionage operation and helped put a career criminal in prison. That's exactly the kind of practical intelligence we're looking for. The conversation lasted 20 minutes. Morrison & Associates was launching a new division focused on corporate fraud investigation, and they wanted someone with real-world experience rather than just academic credentials. Someone who understood how to gather evidence, build cases, and handle the human element of financial crimes. The salary they offered was 3 times what I made from the auto shop. I told them I'd think about it. That evening, I walked down to Murphy's Tavern to discuss the offer with Ricky. The bar was busy with the usual crowd, construction workers, office employees, retirees, and locals who'd made Murphy's their second home. So let me get this straight, Ricky said, sliding a beer across the bar. The same law firm that fired your ex-wife wants to hire you to catch people like the guy she was sleeping with? That's about the size of it. And you're considering it? I'm considering it. Why? It was a good question. I'd built a successful business, found peace with my new life, established a routine that worked. Why would I want to complicate that by taking a job that would drag me back into the world of corporate drama and professional betrayal? Because I'm good at it. I said finally, because it turns out that 15 years of marriage to a lawyer taught me more about investigation and evidence than I realized, and because there are probably other people out there getting manipulated the way Cleo was manipulated. So, this is about justice? This is about using what I learned from the worst experience of my life to help other people avoid the same trap. Ricky nodded slowly. That's either very noble or very stupid. Maybe both. What about the shop? I'd keep it, run it on weekends and evenings. The investigation work would be project-based, not full-time. And you're sure you want to get back into that world? The corporate politics, the legal maneuvering, all the stuff that made Cleo so miserable? I thought about it for a moment. The difference is, this time I'd be working to expose the bad guys instead of being married to someone who got manipulated by them. Fair point. I took the job. 6 months later, I'd helped Morrison and Associates uncover fraud in 3 different cases. A construction company that was billing for materials they never purchased, an accounting firm that was skimming money from client trust funds, a medical device company that was falsifying safety reports. The work was satisfying in a way that fixing cars never quite achieved. Cars broke down through normal wear and tear, mechanical failure, accidents. But corporate fraud was intentional. It was people choosing to hurt other people for personal gain. Stopping that felt like justice. The phone call that brought everything full circle came on a cold December morning. Brooks, it's Carla Dorsey. I hadn't spoken to her since the trial, where she'd testified as the prosecution's star witness. Graham had been sentenced to 5 years in federal prison and ordered to pay restitution to the companies he'd defrauded. Mrs. Dorsey, how are you? I'm well, thank you. And it's Carla Romano now. I went back to my maiden name after the divorce. Congratulations on starting fresh. Actually, that's why I'm calling. I heard about your new career in fraud investigation. I wanted to discuss a potential collaboration. What kind of collaboration? I'm starting my own forensic accounting firm, specializing in cases involving corporate espionage and financial fraud. I think we could work well together, your investigation skills and my accounting background. That's an interesting proposition. There's something else. I've been tracking Graham's activities before he came to Millbrook. I think there are at least 6 other cases similar to yours and Cleo's. Women who were manipulated into providing inside information, companies that were defrauded, marriages that were destroyed. You want to go after him for the other cases? I want to help the other victims get justice, and I want to make sure there are consequences for everything he did, not just what happened here in Millbrook. I thought about it for a moment. Working with Carla Romano would mean diving deeper into the world that had destroyed my marriage, but it would also mean helping other people who'd been victimized the same way Cleo had been victimized. Let's meet and discuss it. We met the following week at the same booth in Murphy's Tavern, where she'd first shown me the evidence against Graham. This time, the portfolio she brought contained information about his previous operations in 3 different cities. He's been running the same con for at least 8 years, she explained. Target successful women in professional settings, seduce them, extract inside information, then disappear when the operation is complete. How many victims? That I can document? 14 women, 7 companies, estimated damages in excess of $20 million. The scope was staggering. Graham Dorsey hadn't just destroyed my marriage, he'd been systematically destroying lives and careers for nearly a decade. What's the statute of limitations on these cases? Varies by state and by the specific crimes involved, but we're within the window for most of them. And you think we can build cases? I think we can build airtight cases. The pattern is clear, the documentation is thorough, and several of the victims are willing to cooperate. I studied the evidence she'd assembled. Financial records, communication logs, travel receipts, employment histories. She'd built a comprehensive profile of a career criminal who specialized in emotional manipulation and corporate espionage. Why me? I asked. You could work with any number of private investigators or law enforcement agencies. Because you understand what it feels like to be on the receiving end of his manipulation. Because you know how to handle evidence and build cases. And because you're not interested in glory or recognition, you're interested in justice. How do you know that? Because if you were interested in glory, you would have written a book about what happened with Cleo and Graham. You would have done interviews, appeared on talk shows, turned your story into a career opportunity. Instead, you quietly rebuilt your life and started helping other people solve their problems. She was right. I'd had offers from publishers, journalists, documentary filmmakers. Everyone wanted to tell the story of the mechanic who exposed corporate espionage through a public affair reveal. I'd turned them all down. So, what's the plan? We work with law enforcement and civil attorneys to reopen the old cases. We help the victims understand what really happened to them. We make sure Graham serves time for all of his crimes, not just the ones in Millbrook. And we help other people avoid becoming victims in the future. Exactly. I looked across the table at Carla Romano, the woman who'd orchestrated the exposure of my wife's affair as part of her own quest for justice. A year and a half ago, I would have been angry about being manipulated. Now, I was grateful for the outcome. When do we start? How about Monday? We shook hands across the table, sealing a partnership that would have been unimaginable 18 months earlier. Two people whose marriages had been destroyed by the same man, now working together to make sure he faced consequences for all of his crimes. Outside Murphy's Tavern, snow was beginning to fall on the streets of Millbrook, the same streets where I'd driven to the Paradise Pines motel, where I'd confronted my wife's betrayal, where I'd started the process of rebuilding my life. I walked back to my apartment above the bar, past Carven auto sales, past the places that had become the foundation of my new life. Tomorrow I'd start working on cases that would take me to other cities, other victims, other stories of betrayal and recovery. But tonight, I was content to sit in my chair and think about how far I'd come from the man who'd received that text message about his wife's affair. That man had been angry, hurt, focused on revenge and public humiliation. This man was focused on justice, prevention, and helping other people rebuild their lives after betrayal. The contract with my old life was closed. The contract with my new life was just beginning, and for the first time in years, I was excited to see what came next.